Welcome back to another P5JS video. In this one we're going to be making shapes. And of course this is Sensei Charles as it was last time. The first thing we should go over is how to make basically any shape. So for one of these shapes is going to be our circle. And we can make it by typing in circle and specifying an x coordinate, a y coordinate, and a diameter. So remember the x coordinate is your left and right position, your y coordinate is your up and down, and your d is going to be your diameter, which is the length from one side to the other, the circle passing through the center. So if we hop over to the code, then we can get started. The first thing you want to do is make a new project. So if you don't have one already, go to File and press New, and you'll make a new one. Otherwise, we can start here. For this video, we're only going to be using the setup function, which runs right as we start the game. As you remember, the draw runs every single time we update, but since we're only going to be drawing shapes, we don't need to use a draw. So I'm just going to delete that right now. And now that we only have our function set up, all that's left is our create canvas, which makes our screen, and we can try making a circle. So I'm just going to put something here. Let's try circle, whoops. I don't know, 200, 200, 20, and 200, 200 is just the center of our screen. So if I make it, and you can see it right there, towards the center of our screen, we have a circle with a diameter of 20. And of course, if we were to switch this to something like 100, then it would become larger, right? And then of course, you can change your X position and Y position as you like. Going back to this, right? We want to make sure we always put our circle like where it makes sense. So if we made it before we created the canvas, then there'd be nothing for the circle to go on. So we have to make sure we make the canvas first and then put the circle underneath. Right? And the next thing you might want to do is change the color. So you already have a circle on the screen, but right now it is just our a white circle with like a black outline. And maybe you want to switch this. So one way to switch that would be to specify something before we type in the function here, circle. So if we go over here, we can see we have a few options to choose from. And of course, these aren't all the options. These are just some of them that I picked out to show you. So one of them is going to be our fill. And that's going to take a red, green, and blue value to choose a color. And the fill is just going to be the fill color. So on our circle that we created, that would be the white center. The stroke is the same as the outline, and that also has a red, green, and blue. If you want to completely get rid of the fill or the stroke, then you can put no fill or no stroke. And if you wanted to increase the thickness of the outline, you can put stroke weight and put in a number, which is going to act as the thickness of the line. So let's try it out. Right. And remember, we have to specify this above the function in order for it to count. If we put it underneath, then we'd create the circle and then change the color, in which case the circle would have no idea that you changed the color at all. So we're going to put the fill up here. So for our fill color, I want a lot of blue in it. So I'm going to create a color that has a majority of blue, right? So if you remember, it's going to be red, green, and then blue. So we have to specify it in that order. I want a little bit of red, just give it a little bit of a different color in it too. Don't want any green, and I want a lot of blue, so I'm gonna give that a value of something like 240. Right? Put the semicolon in, start the game again. We got our blue. Right? And let's say, well, that blue looks nice, but that outline not so much. So the first thing I want to do is change the thickness of the outline. So let's say I want it to be much thicker. I'm gonna say 5. Right? I'm also going to turn auto refresh on, right? And that's a much thicker line. And out of curiosity, I don't think this is going to look nice. I'm just going to put in a nice 200, 200, 0 in there. Just going to make this yellow. And I want it to be much brighter. So I'm going to put 255. And wow, look at that. It's a blue circle with a yellow outline. Right. And of course you can use whatever numbers you want here. Okay, well that might be nice, but that's not really all that great because all we know how to do is create a single circle, right? So how about we try making a rectangle? So there's a few cool things about the rectangle, as we can see here. Just like the circle, if you want to create a rectangle, we just call it rect. We don't need the entire word. It's just shortened to rect here. And then we have a lot of parameters, but we actually only need 3 of them. The first one's going to be your x coordinate, just like with the circle. You also need the y. And instead of diameter, since we're making a square, or not a square, but a rectangle, we also need to provide a width value. And then all these parameters with square brackets is actually an optional parameter, which means that you don't have to specify it, but if you do, it'll change how it makes it. And then you have a bunch of these other ones for a radius of the top left corner and all the other corners, and that basically just rounds them. A higher number will, of course, round that corner more and make it look more round. So I guess we can try that right now. Going over to the code, and I'm just going to keep the color the same for now, so we can just test it. Just put a rect, and I want it to be centered just like the other one, but I also want it to be below it. So I'm going to put something like 300, and then I'm going to put 80 and 70. Right, get that in there. And one thing you might notice right off the bat is that our square or rectangle isn't actually centered. So that's because right now we haven't set up how we want to have each of these objects created on the screen. So for the circle, it's going by the center, and for the rectangle, it's going by one of the corners. If we wanted to make sure that it always goes by the same thing, we have to put another function there that we'll go over in a different video, or you can look at the reference if you want to see now. But for now, let's say we want to add some roundness to the corner. So I'm going to put another comma in, and let's just say, let's provide 1, I'll put a 60 in there. Right, and since we only provide 1, it's going to round all of our corners by 60, and that's going to make it much more like an oval than a square. So let's say we want to do the next one, say no roundness. Right, there we go, got only one corner rounded. Let's say we want a little bit, and let's say if this last one you want a lot. Look at that. You have the left side rounded and the right side a little bit, but not so much, except for the top right corner. Right? And then with this, you can make a lot of different shapes. So if I were to make like another one, like this, right? But as an example, I made the same thing except change where the roundness was. So we have a duplicate, but it's flipped horizontally. So you can see like maybe you can make like some shoes out of this, something like that if you wanted. And then of course we can go over and change the colors a little bit. So let's do that now. Let's say instead of this blue color, we wanted red. So let's say 230 and 10 and put a little bit of blue in there. Right, and then you get this like red color. You can change the outline as well. So let's say this one we actually don't want an outline. And there you go. It's gone, and now you got some red rounded rectangles and a circle. Okay, so continuing, there's a lot of other shapes we can use. So here are the rest of them that are here, or a lot of them at least. We have the arc, ellipse, line, point, quad, square, and triangle. If you want to find out exactly how all of these work, apart from just the parameters they take, you can go over to the reference at p5js.org/reference. Otherwise, we can go and look at quads and triangles. So a quad is a 4-sided shape, which is a lot like a rectangle, except you get to choose exactly where these points are. So that means you can make something like a diamond instead, or you could also make something like a parallelogram. And then you also have the triangle, which works exactly like the quad, except there are 3 points instead of 4. If you look here, you have an x1, so it's going to be your first x coordinate followed by the first y coordinate, then the second one, and the second y, and so on until you get to the 4th. So let's try that out in our code. Okay, so for this quad here, I think I'm going to make a trapezoid. So right, that's still 4 corners. So we're going to have a quad here, and let's start the first one off at 50, 50. And then for the next one, we want to move to the right. So I'm going to put 100 on 50 and save there. Right, and remember, it's going to be x1, y1, and then x2, y2. So our first 2 numbers here are our first point, and then the second two are our next point. And then for the next one, I want to go down a little bit and to the right, so I'm going to do 150, 0. And then for this last one, I'm going to do 0, 0. Right, and there you go. You have a trapezoid up the top of our screen. And if you're having any trouble with this, make sure you're specifying your points in a counterclockwise or clockwise order. If you mix them up by doing something like this, you can see that we have a weird shape, and that's because it's trying to connect the wrong points together. Right? So it gets the first two, and then the third one is actually at like that 0, 0 point that we wanted our endpoint to be, but since that is not our endpoint, it's then looping back over to our other point, which is causing this weird error in our code. Alright, so I'm just going to switch that back over, and then we can look at our triangle. Remember, triangle is the same thing as quad, except you only have 3 points. I'm going to put a triangle in here. 350, 250, let's see. Let's do 400, and 150. And for this last one, we'll do 150, 0. Well, that looks a little weird, so I'm just going to increase that number to 150 as well. There we go. We have a triangle overlapping our circle with its first point being 350, 250, which is down here. We have our second point up here and our third one right here. And you have a triangle. There's no way to mix up the points, since no matter which way you do it, there's always one way to get to the next one. Okay, and now for the challenge. So now that you know exactly how to create shapes, your challenge is to make a scene of your own. So to the right here, you can see an example scene that I made. Just some winter scenery, a snowman with some trees in the background. So I want to challenge you guys to make one of your own. Some examples would be something larger like the winter scenery I have here. You can also make something kind of simple like a bookshelf, an airplane, or some planets in the solar system. Basically, whatever you want to make. Anyways, that's going to be the end of the video. I hope you all liked and enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.